Welcome to the human race. This is what we've got, right? We've got bodies, we've got genitals. Like this is normal. And I mean, we need to be able to talk about these things as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
so this is how it is. So the energy continuum is struggle, attach, connect. And let's just talk a little bit about that. When I say the energy continuum is struggle, attach, connect, what does that say to you? You actually have got this as a page. It looks slightly different, but it is in your notes from the coach training from last year.
Okay,
So you can actually have a look for it. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so remember last time I was the one that suckled with the energy continuum.
Mm.
Here we go again.
Okay. Thank you. There's the struggle.
Keep themselves.
Yes.
I don't understand this continuum because it says struggle, attach, and connect. And for me, I almost feel like the biggest challenge to connection is the opportunity that comes from, or the lack of disconnecting or detaching. Is that even a word? Is detach a word?
Yeah, it is a word. So just tell us a bit more about that, please, Safia.
Like, is it struggle and attach, or when we are able to connect, is it because we detach from things?
Okay, we're going to talk about what connect means in a bit, but thank you for that. That's actually that's a nice place to kick off. Actually, who else has got something to say about struggle, attach, and connect?
So I think for me, the continuum is very true in terms of how I experience it. So,
Okay.
so one of the big struggles that I have is to give words to what's going on the inside. Okay. So I feel mushy and I feel out of balance and I feel gawk, and then I don't get words to explain it. And I can't tell you why I'm feeling that way because I don't know. But it's normally when I've disconnected to my connection. It's normally when I'm trying to figure it out with my head and I'm trying to make sense of it in a
like an intellectual
logical way. And some of this doesn't really have logic. So for me, the attaches when I actually get back in my body, have the experience in my body, allow my body to start showing me or giving me messages. And then the connection that I feel there is almost bigger than that inner knowing. It's more like a spiritual connection. It's connecting to my whole self again. So the attach for me is that process of grounding more than anything else.
Beautiful. And I mean, you see that integration card is part of the suit, right?
It's sitting right here.
Yeah. There you go.
I've been looking at it the whole week.
So this is the energy continuum. And when I was chatting to Taryn about it, I was saying the struggle to me is ignorance. So the struggle is when people, exactly as you say, Teresa, it comes out of not knowing. You said, I don't know why I'm mushy and I can't find words. But it's a little bit like the kind of the spiral of the last suit that we talked about. But it's this, people are struggling because they don't have options. Because they don't know about the options that exist. And often that's our job as coaches when they come to us, is to try and just remind people that options exist. And sometimes that reminding is quite difficult because they might be looking straight at it and they can't see it. So that's for me, that's what the struggle is. When I was talking to Taryn, I said for me it's ignorance. And Taryn said, yeah, it's actually quite a good word for it. So that struggle is ignorance, is not knowing that I have options. And so, Teresa, you talked about the portal. The portal at that point is closed, right? There's nothing that can be birthed. The Vesica Piscis is about birthing. It's about bringing something new into the world. The attached portion is quite interesting, because what will sometimes happen, and you'll see this with your clients, once somebody finds an option, they can become quite attached to that option. And then the old joke is, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So what I say, you'll see this in your clients, is they become attached to us. So I've got two clients at the moment. The one woman, I'm giving her media coaching actually around how to deal with the media. And today, I think it's my third session with her today. And she says, can't you be there with me? So there's an attachment, right? She's found an option, and the only option she can find is me. But this suit is called Trust Your Inner Knowing. And if Terence said this last year, if you only have two options, you have no options. Two options is a trap: my way or the highway, black or white. There's always a third option. And so that's what we have to do with our clients. I've got another guy, and he's also, he's very, very like a little duckling. He's attached to me, And so I'm having to say to him, look, what have you got? What inner resources do you have? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this attachment. And then the connection is what the suit is about, is a connection to yourself. So now we're not talking about an external locus of control. They're not attached to us as coaches. They're not attached to a particular model. That can happen. Taryn and I see a couple, and Taryn said something, and the guy, he just latched onto this thing. And as far as he's concerned, that's the truth. That's the only model that he's got to explain his whole relationship. So once again, he's kind of trapped in this attachment. So I don't know if you know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. The Dunning-Kruger effect is you think you know stuff, but you actually don't. It's the sense that you know more than you actually do. So I have it in myself. I used to run a logistics magazine, and about 20 years later, a logistics company approached me and wanted me to help them with their training. I said, leave it to me. And so I got all their training material, and then all of a sudden I realized how little I know about logistics. So until that point, I thought I was an expert. Oh, I know about logistics. So that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. You think you know stuff. But if you keep an open mind and you try and learn something, you realize how ignorant you actually are. And for a lot of clients, they never get there, That's our job, is to just remind them that more exists than the one thing that they're thinking of. And then there's this connection to your inner knowing. So I like to think of this suit in the following way. Here are kind of some groupings. So the first grouping, I'm just looking at my screen because it's just easier to see, is call back your spirit. The next one is connect back to source. And the next one is trust your inner knowing. So I think of those three as kind of related. And then the other two is let your light shine. And what's it? Let go of the fear.
Step into your full power.
Step into your full power. Thank you. And then on the bottom right-hand side, there's speak your truth and express yourself. And then the other two, the integration card and the void card, are kind of on their own. They don't really group up or clump up with other cards. So let's just look at this one quickly. The key words often on these things is the verb. So if you're looking at the card and you're trying to make sense of it, sometimes it's useful to look at the verb. And the verb on the first card there is call back your spirit. So what does that mean, to call back? Now your spirit, what is your spirit? So we'll talk about those two things. So I've had a rough couple of days. I had a coaching session with a client yesterday, which I didn't think went very well. And so when I was in a coaching session today, it's easy for me then to become preoccupied with what happened yesterday and to blame myself and to think about all sorts of nasty things. Now, in coaching, we're supposed to be present and listening to the client and all of that. And so at that point, I need to call back my spirit from where it is. I have to kind of bring myself back to the present moment. And so sometimes our clients, if the addict archetype shows up, that's often a place where we need to call back the spirit. What is the addict trying to numb? What are they trying to avoid? And so what you need to do is call back the spirit into the present moment. The next one is connect back to source. And so one way of looking at this, again, what is connect and what is source? So one way of thinking about this card is, where is God? Is God inside or outside you?
Inside.
Okay, a lot of people, I had a client yesterday, and she's she's religious, and she's really getting a lot of sustenance from her faith. But she thinks of God as outside herself. Another way to think about this card is, what do people plug into that feeds them? So I think about Teresa's garden, for example. Teresa often talks about her garden. And that's something that Teresa plugs into. So that's another way of trying to understand a client's source, the source of their energy, which again goes back to the Vesica Pisces. And then finally, this idea of trusting your inner knowing. And that inner knowing is a very small, quiet voice. It's not a loud, dramatic voice. And so what are we ignoring? Is there a small, little voice? Can we be quiet enough? Can we call back our spirits enough? Can we connect back to the source of ourselves enough, rather than looking outside? So these two clients that are quite attached to me, for example, how can I help them connect back to themselves? How can I help them to connect back to their own source? And then there's the trust your inner knowing. what's that small voice? So the story I always tell about this card is, I remember going to the movies one night, and I parked my car. I got out of my car, and then I walked to the movies, and I was halfway there, and I thought, no. And I went back to my car, and I moved the car to a different parking spot. And then I went inside, and I felt a bit stupid. My intuition told me to move the car, but I mean, it's a stupid thing to do. It's still in the garage. So I said to my friend, I said, I've just done something quite stupid, like I've moved my car, but I guess if I get back and the car's still there, then I'm not getting any reward for trusting my intuition. And she said, you don't understand. She said, the reward is not the fact that your car's still there. The reward is that you are now know peace. The reward is you're not worried about your car anymore because you moved it. And so that's the inner knowing. The inner knowing is not about, you'll hear this, you've said it yourself, I should have trusted my intuition. And that's the thing we're trying to interrupt with this card. Where are people ignoring their intuition? And can they find a peace? So we talked about that a few moments ago, but that's the idea behind this card. Is there a small voice? I mean, I love this card because of the tattoo, on the wrist. That's where north is. I know where north is. I just have to look at my wrist. Any comments or thoughts about this? About these three cards?
I haven't ever looked at it like that, but I think I feel this process at the moment.
Okay.
And it's almost a recipe. When I go into my struggle phase, it feels like if I practice these three things, I'll come out of it faster, better.
Okay. I know I get very attached. So I'll be struggling with something, and I'll read a book, and I'll think, that's the answer. And I know that about myself, and I think that's the answer. So now I've learned to wait and think, can it be part of the answer? And then connect back, and also connect the dots, right? I've read this book, but I've also read this book. Do they connect in some way? Santi.
So I don't know if you first want to go through all the cards, but I'm struggling to understand the struggle, attach, connect. So what I understand of what you said now was, okay, the struggle part is fine. The ignorance, they don't know that there's options, and that's why they're struggling. So our, job as a coach then at that time is to, lead them into further options that they can obviously find. Okay, so that I got. And then you said, okay, so now with the attach, now they go and they attach to an option.
They can do sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, they can attach to an option. Okay. And that's the trap. All right. But then I don't understand now further, so where does the connect? I understand the connect is with your inner self and spirit and source and that, but what is the conversation with the client then? You understand?
So
to not
yeah.
attach that option, but to again start looking at further. So what is their actions going to be? Because isn't that going to put them back in the struggle?
Maybe. So the thing with the attach is they think they've got options. They think they're making progress. But actually that they don't, because they're too attached to one way.
Yeah.
So they feel very happy, because what's happened is we've given them. I'll give you an example from this client yesterday. I said to her, what kind of conversations are you having with your team? Because there's different conversations you can have. You can have a drama conversation, which is all about the gossip and about who said what. Or you can have a detailed conversation. Or you can have a solution conversation. So these are all different levels of conversation. You can have a purpose conversation. So what kinds of conversations are you having? And she said, I'm having drama conversations. And so now, in fact, I spoke to her today again, and she said, oh, that's the tool. So now she's attached to this thing. And if she's not careful, that's the only thing she'll use, if she's not careful. She's very happy because she's found a tool. But it's not enough, because she's not connecting to herself. She's connected to the tool.
Okay. So you start the process again.
So absolutely.
Okay.
So I'll have another conversation with her, and then I'll start talking about what happens for her when she has these conversations.
Okay.
And how does she know she's having this conversation? And what's causing her to have that kind of conversation? And now suddenly she's starting to connect to herself. She hasn't done that yet. She can't integrate it yet.
Okay.
But it's fine. It's fine. Like, it's a process, right?
Mm.
And that's what tonight's about. It's about this integration. Somebody else had their hand up.
Me?
Go. Go on. Yeah.
So Eric, I was just wondering, you were talking about when you were talking about calling back your spirit, that you have a tendency to maybe be thinking about what happened yesterday, and I am just wondering, is that not mind, what you were talking about? I have more a sense of calling back the spirit is not about. So I definitely think getting into the present moment will have more of an opportunity for you to actually connect to source and call back your spirit. So that part, I'm in agreement with, but I almost feel as though both the struggle and the attach is a mind game. So attachment might not only be attachment to a new tool that a coach has opened up for you. It might actually be attachment to beliefs or ideas and, all sorts of other things. But also, the struggle could just be like a mental struggle where you can't, I agree, there's ignorance and you don't necessarily have options, but maybe you have so many options and you're just, spinning. So I almost have an idea that this is very similar to what we, from to the other energy continuum of the other deck that we did, or suit that we did, where initially there isn't a the consciousness. So it feels to me as though the attach, some things have come into your consciousness, come into your awareness. You start becoming aware of your beliefs, your ideas, your tools that are available to you, but you're still very attached to them. The connect is when you've gotten to the point where the consciousness has gone beyond just noticing what is there. And then going back to what I was initially saying, I feel like the spirit is not the mind. It's the integration of everything. It's the mind and the heart and the body and the everything that comes into the present moment with full consciousness. And then it's like, okay, the spirit is here, and because the spirit is there as well and everything's integrated, there's a connection to source, and then you can trust because everything is integrated. Yeah, I said a whole lot of things, and I think I was jumping from struggle, attach, connect, but I just wanted to say that I do feel that calling back your spirit is not about what's happening for you mentally. It's maybe more about coming into the present moment and shedding a brighter light on the present, so that you are still in the mind, but you're not only in the mind.
So there's no conversation about these cards that is wrong.
Okay.
That's what makes these cards so beautiful, right? There is no conversation that can possibly be wrong about these cards. So it may be, Anastasia, that your clients present with mental absence, and then if they get this card, then you can have that conversation with them. I had a client on Tuesday. She's 50, and she says, I feel like I'm waiting to live. I feel like I haven't started living yet. So I didn't give her a card, but that would have been a card for her, right? What does that mean? Where's your spirit gone that you can't live? That you haven't found? What does that even mean, right? I've done this whole thing. I've got this beautiful career behind me, but I feel like I haven't really lived. I haven't started living yet. So there's a very strong call back your spirit energy to that conversation. I didn't give her a card, but so there was another hand that went up. I didn't see whose it was.
I think it was mine.
Okay.
But for me, it's like you said, you can't get the cards wrong. But if I think about struggle and attach, I think that many of us, especially when we're in our compulsions and our addictions, then we are very attached to our struggles. And like Anastasia also said, to our beliefs and to our ideas and that kind of thing. So for me, I just use the word attach then as a concept. And it's depending on the context, it will be about attaching or about detaching.
Beautiful. I think that's beautiful, because it's pointing out the attachment, and it can also be pointing out the detachment, right? So you talked about being attached to beliefs. The other thing that clients get attached to is their stories.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that our job is as coaches, is to try and shift people's stories about themselves. That's one of the key jobs of a coach, is to try and understand what stories we're telling, because that's often the cause of the struggle.
The way I make sense of this is all the three cards. There is the locus of reference seems to be externally, where the cards are calling to bring the locus of reference internally. So either you call back to spirit, or you connect to source, or you trust that inner noise that it's in. So the struggle is when you lose the compass of what is important, and you are attached to being confused.
Or you're attached to approval. We're going to talk about that. That's a very
Or approval or external
yeah.
reference. Yeah.
It's an absolutely, and that is definitely one of the themes of this suit. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. You've actually jumped ahead slightly, Angela. So that's an excellent observation. This is in fact what Angela's talking about a little bit, right? Let your light shine and step into your full power. So let your light shine. What's the verb there? Let. And what that means is that we shine anyway. Are we willing to be seen? And the shining, exactly as Angela was just saying now, is independent of somebody's opinion of it. The light is shining anyway. So the struggle there is somebody's hiding their light. And the attachment might be the attachment to the story that the light isn't bright enough, or it's the wrong color, or it's flickering, or some shit, whatever it is, right? That's the story that they might be attached to. There's something wrong with their light. The struggle is they don't even realize they've got a light, or they're hiding their light. The attachment is the attachment to the way their light shines, or maybe there's judgment or shame around that. And then the connect is, can I let my light shine anyway? Can I be the person I am? Because that's independent, exactly as Angela says. That's not looking for approval. The light shines. You know, the flower doesn't look for approval. The flower blooms. And then that step into your full power, that's also, there's the step, right? So there's an action that's needed there. And that, for me, there are two things around the full power. The one is, can you step into what you're good at? Stop apologizing for that. And there's power in that, right? There's also power in decision making, which is the theme of this whole suit. It's about trusting your inner knowing. So that stepping is also a decision, because to step towards, I have to step away. I can't do both. In order to step, I have to move. So the full power is, what am I really good at? That's part of it. For me, the other part of it is almost like, what am I capable of? So my story around this is a guy called Oliver Sacks. He's a neurologist, and he wrote a book called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. So he's a neurologist, and he deals with people with brain injuries. And these brain injuries manifest in different ways. And this guy, he couldn't tell his wife apart from a hat. That's just like his brain had shut down that circuit. And the one patient he had, this guy was an accountant, and he had an accident, and he could no longer remember being an accountant. He knew nothing about accountancy. And so he retrained as a concert violinist. So we all have too many lives that we can to live in one lifetime. We could all be many things. But what is it that we're not doing? Where is it that we're not stepping into our full power? So I find myself constantly putting myself in, my friend Jan used to say, yeah, you're always putting yourself in harm's way. So I do these drawings, for example, or I'll learn a piece on the piano by Bach, or for this conference, I wrote a piece of music which 96 people performed. Now, I don't call myself a composer, but I'm not scared to try that. So that's what these cards are about. Stepping into what people are good at, or what the client is good at, and also, what could they explore? What are they stepping towards, and what are they stepping away from? And then their light shines anyway. Can they accept their light for what it is, without judging it themselves, without trying to change the light to fit in with other people's expectations? So who's got something to say about these two cards?
So Eric, I'll go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
lately I've been in so many conversations where, from a corporate perspective, where people were talking about purpose, and I'm not quite sure, you know, from a macro perspective what's happening, but it's almost as if there's a lot of people that's kind of questioning when things are going tough. You know, and I'm now talking from a economic and a electricity and also those perspective. And there's a lot of things they cannot control. So we're starting to question quite a lot about purpose. And for me, these two cards really also talk to that, about your purpose, your inner purpose. And it really sometimes takes some time to discover it or to agree with it. And then when you've discovered and you agreed with it, then you need to then be it, right? So it's that struggle, attach, connect. Yeah. So I think that's what it really kind of resonates for me when I look at these two cards.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think, you know, another way of looking at the step into your full power is step into your full power of choice. What is it that you can do? Now, there's not a lot we can do about Eskom. I don't want to try and solve Eskom. Personally, I've got better things to do or different things to do. So what can I do? What power do I have? And once again, you know, talking about the previous three cards, it's about that choice, right? Can the clients see a choice? Can the clients connect back to their source and step into that full power, step away from the attachment to their stories of being a victim, or their stories of not knowing, or their stories of not being able to, or whatever it is, right? So I want to look at the next two. Are we happy with these?
I just think that, Eric, that the concept of intuition is a concept of high levels of connection. And for me, the concept of intuition is also about surrendering to your power. So yes, there's on the one hand, there's this active taking your power, there's stepping into your power, but I think that if I were to describe the biggest struggle, for instance, in my own life, it's to acknowledge that I have the power in the first place.
Yeah. So there's the attachment to the story, right?
Yeah.
And that, I promise you, Safia, that's I have the same struggle. And I promise you, everybody on this call's got the same struggle. And every client we see's got the same struggle.
Yeah.
I'll give you a silly example. So for many of the coaches, for all of the coaches who are having photographs, I had a conversation with them. And the conversation was actually about this. Who are you as a coach? How do we let your light shine in that photo shoot? And then that full power that you described, Safia, is every coach brought a prop. They brought something that they wanted to use to illustrate who they are. And that's stepping into your power, right? That's that's allowing your light to shine. And that's realizing I have the power it's a small thing, but to shape my image, to be seen, and I have the power to shape my image, to show myself. I have the power to do that. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying.
It does. But as you were speaking, what occurs to me is that, you started the first slide with that quote from Brene Brown.
Yeah.
And this idea of connecting to intuition, very often, and I'm not saying this is an absolute, I really am not, but it is a reflection of my experience with both my own life and the people that I interact with. Very often, in order for us to connect with our intuition and to live authentically with our own power, we pretty often have to almost disconnect from the things that detract from our power externally. And this is like a very, very thin edge of the wedge that we live on. Because I think few things are more daunting for me personally than bucking the system completely. But if I were to step into my full power, that might, it might actually frighten the living crap out of myself and my own stories. My own stories have an identity which limits my power.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, it's almost like this whole concept of stepping into power is almost, there's like a ruthlessness, not a ruthlessness, there's a degree of violence that you do to something inside of you.
So you've spoken a lot tonight about detachment, this kind of, duality between attach and detach.
Yeah.
And that step is a way of detaching.
Yeah.
And I would say to you, I'll offer you this, I don't know if it makes any sense. If stepping into your full power is destructive, then you're limiting your power. The most powerful power is the most powerful strength is a gentle strength. The silly example is if you hold a bird. If you hold it very tightly, you will hurt the bird. But if you hold it too gently, the bird will escape because birds are strong. So how do you hold a bird in a way that doesn't hurt the bird, but is still strong and firm? And that's power.
Power, Eric. I think there are many different kinds of power. I think that if you want the fynbos to survive, you've got to burn it.
You have to burn it. So the interesting thing about fynbos is you have to burn it with a cool fire. So there are two kinds of fire. There's a hot fire and a cool fire. And the cool fires move very quickly through the fynbos. But if there hasn't been fire for too long, what can happen is the underbrush can get dense and there's a lot of dead material around. And then the fire moves more slowly. And they call that a hot fire. And that kills the fynbos. My uncle used to work for a fire. He used to work in Cape Town exactly on this for an organization called Working with Fire. And he asked me to do some work for them. And so I know a little bit about this, not a lot, but this concept of a cool fire and a hot fire really, what did you say? They say they need the cool fire for the fynbos. The hot fires are dangerous for them. So you're right, you're absolutely right. And as I said to you, Safia, there's no way of having a conversation about these cards that's wrong. What we're doing is we're having a conversation that can be thought-provoking for ourselves and for our clients. And that's what it's about. Santi?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing, what Safia is saying is, or what I was just thinking about, so there's a difference between a power that is connected with your ego and a power that's connected with spirit. So I think when you step into your full power, I think the underlying meaning is, the power that's connected with your spirit, that's connected to source. That's a different type of power than the ego that could be very disruptive. And, so that's not, I don't think, the idea of, the God. And it can be, because if you speak to a normal person, like a person that's not like on the journey now, if you say step into your full power, that initial is, ego related.
Yeah.
You know, okay, what is my full power? And that can be very disruptive. What? Disruptive. Or
Yeah. And I mean, I think
Yeah.
Sapia is right. I mean, I'm also scared of my full power, you know? What would that mean? So, you know, and I think you're right, Santi, like if I connect back to my source, and we're going to talk about these cards now, how do I express my full power in a way that isn't destructive?
yeah. Yeah,
That
that's
feeds connection.
yeah.
How can I have both?
Yeah.
So I don't know if any of this is making sense, but it's the wrong way. This way. So these are the two cards I was, yeah?
Sorry, just on those two images, based on what Santi just said, they both speak to light, both the images,
Yeah.
the lighthouse and the light behind the dancer.
Yeah.
So again, speaking to where the power will come from a connection to light.
Yeah. And I think, you know, Savia's point is so beautiful. They are both light. The one is light and the other one is heat. So for the lighthouse, I mean, they do give off heat, but that's not what lighthouses are for. Lighthouses are for light, whereas that fire is actually for heat, and light is almost a byproduct of it.
But I just wanted to say that I think although these two cards
Mm.
really are about light and are about heat, they also both are about darkness.
Yeah.
And for me, almost before you see the light on both cards, you see the darkness. That's for me. And so I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but all I'm just saying is that this is like one of the most, for me, terrifying journeys around, you know, the cards, because egoically, we all rein ourselves in. Our ego is there to protect us, to keep ourselves small, right? To make us bombastic.
Yeah.
This is about making us limitless in a world that wants to contain you.
And the next two cards talk exactly about that, right? And they speak your truth and express yourself. So these, you can see the connection between them. And this is the reason I say it connects back to what Safia is saying about how do we become limitless and not dangerous in a way, right? There's such interesting cards. The one is speak your truth is not about being honest. So I'll give you an example, right? So I've got, it's actually one of Taryn's clients going through a divorce, and it's really tough. And, you know, this woman can easily say, I hate this guy as an asshole. Now, that's not the truth. That's not connecting. That's not trusting her inner knowing. That's coming from a wound, right? That's a struggle wound there, right? What's the truth? The truth is she feels betrayed. The truth is she feels lonely. The truth is she feels scared. That's the truth. So can I speak my truth in a way that is truthful and not honest? Because those two things are different. It goes back to Angela's point about internal and externally referenced. If I'm pointing out and saying you're an asshole, that's one way of putting it. But what is the truth of it? The truth is I'm hurt, I'm scared, I feel betrayed. I'm a little bit lost. So there you go. There's a card for your clients. You know, if you get that card, what does it mean? And the way to think about it is somebody asks a question. What are they actually asking? And what answer do they want? I was listening to a podcast today, and this couple broke up, and the woman said to this man, when you first met me, did you find me attractive? And the man hadn't found her attractive. So he said, no, I didn't find you attractive. That's honesty, right? And the podcaster gave the advice to this man and said, you don't say that. You say, you lie. You say, of course I found you attractive. The answer to the question is, do I look fat in this? The answer is always no. So that's one way of doing it, but that's not speaking the truth. Because those questions have no answer. If somebody says to me, does my bum look fat in this? How do I answer that question? If I say yes, or I say no, those two answers are the same. Because neither of them are particularly believable. What are they actually asking? Do you love me? Do you find me attractive? Am I acceptable to you? That's what they're asking. That's the truth. It's very different from honesty. And then this idea of express yourself, this is what Safia is talking about the limitless power, right? How do I express that power in a way that connects rather than alienates? So I like to wear nail polish, but I don't wear nail polish when I'm in Namibia. Because if I do that, I'm expressing myself, I'm speaking my truth, but I'm doing it in a way that alienates people. Because all they can then see is a man with nail polish. They can't see anything else. So then how is that helpful? So to be true to myself, I have to be true to myself in different ways. In South Africa, it's a bit easier, you know. People still look at me and see the nail polish, but we're a little bit more tolerant here. We've learned a little bit more. A little bit. Whereas in Namibia, I have to be a bit more careful. You know, it's not my home country. It's, you know, I'm there on client business most of the time. It's not really my free time. But I did get my toes painted. I can do that. And then I wore sandals. I can do that in my free time. Any thoughts on these two cards?
I was just thinking also around the express yourself, going back to, I really like what you described around your power being that which you're good at, and expressing yourself, you know, like you've used the example of painting your toenails as a way to express yourself. But expressing yourself is also connecting to your power, connecting to what you're good at. And, you know, living out your life or your days in those ways. So it's not necessarily about telling or about showing others. It's about connecting to your own self and your own power, and almost permissioning yourself to use that which you're good at to express yourself.
Yeah. And so she's beating a drum, right? And you can only see one person, so she's beating her own rhythm. Beautiful.
I think that this is a very difficult suite in human life.
Yeah.
Because even to express yourself, it's so difficult. Because we are so I can't get to the word now, but you know, like we live our lives in these bumper rails. Everything is guided and directed and prescribed, and we are so unconsciously compliant with so many things. I don't think, and like certainly for myself, the only instrument I've ever had has been my brain in a very narrow kind of academic, schooly, know stuff kind of way. That anything that is away from that is quite terrifying.
Dis Safia, maar partykeer praat jy net kak weer.
No, I am being serious. It is.
So I have never seen that in you, Safia.
No, Eric, I don't know how to play, for instance. I have no idea how to play because my life was scheduled in a particular way, right? So I don't know if I have got particular skills or whatever, because guess what? It's just my life is unexperimented with.
Wow.
And now we're raising a generation of kids who are so scheduled, who are so overscheduled. They don't get the space for boredom. They don't get the space to just play. They've got to perform all the time. They've got to do all the time. It is so hard to know who you are when you're friggin' performing tasks and being so over accountable and over. We revere accountability to the point where it violates identity.
I should write that down. That's beautiful. So the reason I was so like rude to you just now is I've never seen you rely on your brain and on your academia in a schooly kind of way. I've never seen that. The only Safia I've ever seen, not the only Safia I've ever seen, you do use your brain. But the Safia I've seen is you connect to people's hearts. That's the Safia I've seen. The Safia that I've seen is a deep desire for connection. I said, what brings you here? And you said, I want to bask in your wisdom. How do you think that made me feel, Safia? Made me feel on top of the world. That's not an intellectual thing. And I don't think you're being insincere either. I think you're being really sincere. And so that's why I said that to you. I think those are two of your skills. Maybe one is academia, and you do use your brain, and you do know a lot of stuff, but you don't. I've never seen you hide behind that. I've only ever seen you want to connect. And you're right about the bumper rails. So for me, where we see this a lot is in sex. It's very hard to ask for what we want in bed. And so I listened to a podcast called Savage Love, and he put it beautifully, this guy, Dan Savage. He says, when you roll out what you want in bed, don't roll it out like you've got a cancer diagnosis. Oh, like this is what I want in bed. I'm sorry, like I hope it doesn't turn you off. No, you roll it out like Christmas present. This is what you get to do with me. So we all have had this experience where we want to have sex with our partner and we're scared of the rejection. And so we say, well, it's been a week, it's been a couple of weeks, we haven't connected sexually, maybe we should get it on tonight. That's not a very compelling argument, right? It's not a very compelling invitation. So how do I express myself using this card? How do I express myself telling my truth, speaking my truth in a way that lands well, in a way that I can express myself without and express my truth and still, as I said, not turn each other, not turn the person off. Do it in a way that's inviting that's connecting rather than disconnecting. And I mean, the most for adults, sex is play. That's really is what it's about. So I guess this is also, you don't work the drums, you play the drums. So she's playing the drum. So I don't know if this gives you anything at all, what I'm talking about.
Thank you very much for that, Eric. I think I was just using myself as an example. It wasn't really about me. It's just my experience is, I think everyone I know and work with in particular, we struggle to express ourselves because it is hard to express yourself when you've not explored yourself, when you've not established that intimacy with yourself. When, you and I had a conversation once, I can't remember what the context was, but the two most difficult questions for people to answer is, who are you and what do you want? These are brain freeze questions. And
They really are. And that's what this suit's about,
That's what I was just saying. I was saying the suit is, I think the other suits for me, there's a level of performance that you can get away with in terms of there's something you must do. For me, this is like, this isn't one that you must do. This is one where you must almost not do in order
Yeah.
to get to it.
Or the doing that you do is the connecting back to yourself. No, absolutely, Sophie. I think you've got it. And then the last two cards are these two. They stand alone, really. They're not connected. I think this group in particular has discussed the void. I think we have a very particular relationship with this card. Thank you, Teresa. So, and that really is the place of inner knowing, right? We have to step into that darkness, that void. So I don't want to talk too much about the void card, but the whole mind, body, heart, and spirit integration. You know, what could be more connecting than that? And that's also what we wanted to do as coaches, is drive that integration. And it's not only, you know, we started this conversation about, you know, Anastasia was saying, call back your spirit. The way I described it sounded like quite a mindy typey thingy. I've seen you, Anastasia. Whereas this is about integrating the heart as well and the spirit. Go, Anastasia.
No, what is something that just popped up just before you came to these two cards is, you know, when Safia was talking about, you know, it's hard to express yourself if you haven't explored yourself. And what I would add to the keywords of this suite would be, you know, curiosity and love of yourself. Because if you could love yourself enough to get curious about yourself and every part or every aspect of your power, because I guess in a strange way, we only really know what our power is in terms of what we've already done in our lives and seen power in whatever things. But, you know, if we've only been walking on a particular path with, you know, these railings that have been keeping us there, you know, there's been no exploration. So, you know, connecting with others and connecting with self, how would you get there? So yeah, so those two things just popped up for me was that curiosity, to be more curious about exploring.
I think that's beautiful.
Truly connecting, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, Anastasia, you've reminded me that that card, Connect Back to Source, is also about parts, right? Connecting back to our parts. And this Express Yourself is also about parts in a way, what can be. What part is expressing itself here? And if I'm expressing yourself, then who is the self that's expressing itself, right? That's our self that's expressing it. In other words, can you be in yourself rather than in your parts? And then that step into your full power can also be seen through the parts lens, right? Who's stepping into that power? Who's harnessing the power of all the parts and saying, we've got these beautiful parts that know how to do all these beautiful things. Can we step into that? So these are all, you know, that's just another lens through which we can see it. But that reminded me of that Connect Back to Source. And I mean, I think Safia and you, Anastasia, have put it so beautifully. You know, you know what, you can't explore yourself until, what did you say? How did you put it? So beautiful.
You're talking about what Safia said.
Yeah, what was it?
You haven't explored
Hard
yourself.
to express yourself when you haven't
Explored
yourself.
It's so beautiful. I want to write that down. You know, it's hard to express yourself if you haven't explored yourself. And that's what this suit is all about. Exploring yourself, right? Your inner knowing. And so there's
integration is as well, is once you've done all that exploration and you've allowed, you know, yourself to be this whole being, you know, the mind, the heart, the spirit, and all the gazillion parts. And that's what the integration is.
Absolutely right. There you go. There's your parts integration again. Absolutely right. So I also said to you that I would tell you about other parts of the body that have this shape of the vesica piscis. The one is also your vocal cords. So your vocal cords are like little elastic bands, and they open and close, and when the air comes through them, they vibrate. So that has the shape of the vesica piscis. And there's your Express Yourself card, right? and the Speak Your Truth card. It goes back to that shape of vibration, and Teresa called it a portal. So what is your voice but a portal to expressing yourself, right? To getting that information into your throat. And then the other one that looks a bit like that is the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is the gland that also governs our intuition. And I guess, you know, Teresa started this by saying it looks like an eye to her. And of course it does. And what is an eye? What are we seeing, right? So that's also another way of looking at it. What are we seeing? The, you know, the eyes are the window to the soul. So what is it that we're seeing with our eyes? So that's the suit. Any final thoughts on? I mean, we could do a day workshop on each of these. You know, we could do exercise around them, but you know, we could have long conversations about each of these. I just wanted to understand or hear from you. What did you get from this suit? Trust your inner knowing. It's about connection. It's about connecting to ourselves, our inner self, our light, whatever. And this idea of the continuum of struggle, attach, connect.
So just, you say these two cards are the anomaly cards. They don't go into the clusters, but stepping into the void feels like it goes in front, and then struggle, attach, connect, and then mind, heart, and mind, body, spirit. Heart and spirit integration is kind of the completion. So the beginning and the end of the process.
Yeah, beautiful. And I mean, you know, Safia's talked a lot about detachment, and there's the void, right? So that's beautiful. I mean, it's not that they're anomalies, it's that they don't, for me, they don't clump up. They don't clump up with other cards. They don't
stand
have
alone.
they don't have a kind of an obvious thematic link with the other cards. Whereas, like, you know, the other ones do seem to clump up a little bit more for me. Thank you, Teresa. Anybody else got any final thoughts on this?
Sorry, I just want to quickly give Safia. Safia, you spoke to my heart tonight. So thank you for the feedback you shared. I felt it, all of it.
I'm so glad, Teresa.
Lovely. Sure.
I'm just sitting and I'm thinking about these cards almost as if this card speaks to like the divinity inside of us, the
exactly
capacity to create ourselves and to recreate ourselves, and to take away from ourselves the parts that no longer serve us, and make ourselves into whatever we choose to make ourselves into.
That is, you've got it in one, you know, and that's the Vesica Piscis. That's the, you know, that's the birthplace of life, right? And to go back to your theme of tonight, Safia, about the detachment, creativity always comes with destruction. So the Hindu god of Shiva is the god of destruction and also of creativity. So there's the idea of stepping into your power. You have to step away in order to step forward. And that's the idea of having to detach from what's holding us in place and then move forward with a connection. Lovely. But absolutely, is God inside or outside? Where's God?
Everywhere.
So, I mean, you know, some people would say God's in heaven. Okay. So then you're externally referenced, as Angela pointed out. Any other thoughts about this?
I've just got also another thought, but it's probably just a projection of my own life. While I was living life in terms of like what Angela was talking with, you know, these sort of external locuses of control.
Yeah.
And really sitting in the, you know, in the struggle and a huge attachment to beliefs, ideas, stories, blah blah blah. It's quite interesting for me where most people view the void as being, you know, this amazing place with infinite possibilities and like connection to your divinity. And, you know, once you come to that still point there, then, you know, you connect to yourself, and what you are will emerge. But it almost felt to me as though with the struggle and the attachment and everything that was going on, it was eventually there was just so much confusion and so much like head butting and so many like internal warfare going on that eventually there's almost like no option but to go into a place where there's just silence, where the void is almost like necessary to just silence everything, whether it's the beliefs, whether it's expectation, whatever it might be. And then only when you sit there for quite a while, then you can start to connect to yourself, explore yourself. So yeah, so the void for me is or can be the sort of place that you just land up going to when you just can't do the struggle anymore.
No, I think that's, you know, it's so beautiful, Anastasia, you know, and, you know, Irena talked about the application of these things in the real world, like, you know, at work, all these purpose conversations. So I was in a group coaching session the other day, and the woman, she said, like, sometimes she'll be in some kind of conflict at work, or there'll be something happening, and she says she goes home. Because right then, our koppie raas, you know, there's too many thoughts in her head about how do I handle the situation, what do I do? She's quite a senior leader. She goes home. And she says, because I need that space to just sit and be with what's happening, and, you know, and just exactly as you say, find that stillness. Because in that stillness you can connect, and then the way becomes a little bit clearer. So I think what you said is 100%, you know, I think it's a beautiful application of this card, Anastasia. I don't think it's a projection. And if it is, so what? You know? Any other thoughts on these, on this, on the suits in as a whole? Let's try this. Whoops.
I think, Eric, just for me to summarize, you know, the difficult question that was highlighted earlier about who are you? These are the cards to start the journey, you know, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the question, I guess, that this suit is asking us, is who are you? How do you connect to who you are? How do you express yourself? How do you step into your power? You know, how do you trust your inner knowing? What is your true north? You know, what does that mean? Absolutely. What is your source? What is feeding you? And that source might be, you know, it might be trauma. You know, maybe that's what's driving you. But if you can connect to it, then you can work with it, you know? Beautiful. Okay. So I want to just spend 15 or 20 minutes on, 15 minutes or 20 minutes on a little bit of content. Just to remind us of the quote that we started with: connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. So we could also talk about the suit that we've been talking about, connecting to ourselves, right? It's also an energy. So when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. And I guess people will derive sustenance and strength from the relationship when they connect with themselves. You know, Safia's opening thing, I'm here to bask in your wisdom. So do I feel at that point seen and heard and valued? Am I deriving sustenance and strength from the relationship? Absolutely. And why is that? Because Safia is reminding me that I have inner wisdom. Safia didn't say your wisdom. Or maybe she did, but what I heard was inner wisdom. I guess where else is the wisdom going to be? So when Safia reminds me that I have wisdom, then I start deriving sustenance and strength from the relationship. But what Safia is inviting me to do is connect with myself. And it's a beautiful frame by implication as well, right? So that's the quote that kicks off the session. And the tool is these 4 S's. So I found this in a book. I can't remember the book, but the author irritated the crap out of me. But he had some very cool tools. So I listened to I bitched about the book the whole way through. And I would tell Taryn about the tools. He's got some amazing insights and tools, but he irritated me some of the time. But he talked about relationships, and he talked about conflict in relationships. That's what the book was about. And so I read the book, and he says the purpose of relationships. John Gottman will say something different, but relationships are about these 4 things. You need to feel safe. And if you want to connect, you have to start with safety. That's why the first benchmark is safety. And only when you feel safe are you prepared to be seen. So the lighthouse card, right? You don't want to be seen unless you feel safe. So this client, the media client, I'm doing some coaching for her. She's the CEO of a construction company, Black woman. And she has been through, she's had health issues, right? She's had fibromyalgia. And so she's had operations to try and sort this out. And she is quite out in her social media. And when I said to her, what are you scared the journalists will find out about you? She says, I'm scared they'll find out about my health issues. She does not want to be seen for that. She doesn't feel safe. So even if I ask her a question like, how have your personal struggles informed your work as a CEO? She doesn't want to be asked that question. She doesn't feel safe enough. So there's this exact suit, trust your inner knowing. She doesn't have the internal strength to hold, oh bugger, there goes the light, to hold that lack of safety. I'm just going to try and see if I can find a way of plugging this in. I can. I just need to find the cable. So only when we feel safe are we prepared to be seen. So to connect with ourselves or our clients, the first thing we have to do is be safe. If I do this, what will happen? Nothing. And only then can we demonstrate to the client that we see them. If we see them without them feeling safe, it's quite a violation. I had this with a client I wasn't very skillful. He came to me for public speaking coaching. And I said, when that happens, what emotions come up for you? But I hadn't framed it properly. And so he felt seen, but he hadn't felt safe yet. And so that was it was a violation for him.
Is that not exposed?
There you go. Beautifully put, Teresa. That's so beautifully put. Wow, I'm going to write that down. If I feel seen without feeling safe, I feel exposed. That's beautiful. But if I feel safe, then I can feel seen, and that's very comforting. And that goes back to the quotes of Brené Brown's about the lack of judgment. And Taryn talks a lot about remove the shame, remove the shame, remove the shame, remove the shame. How do we remove the shame? After people feel seen, after people feel safe and they feel seen, then our next job in relationships is to make your partner feel supported. So being seen is very comforting, but being supported is like the next level up, right? You can see me for who I am. Will you help me achieve my goals? Will you help me live my life? Will you support me in what I want to do? So quite early on in our relationship, Taryn said to me, she looked at me and she said, "You don't really care what I do you?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Like, if I sold cat food, you would just support me." I said, "Yeah." So it was quite early on in our relationship. So she felt seen, but she's a spiritual teacher, and that's not everybody's cup of tea. And, this is not really my cup of tea necessarily. Like, I'm not a super spiritual person. And so, to Teresa's point, perhaps she felt a little bit exposed because it was quite early on in our relationship. So she's sharing with me all this stuff. She's feeling safe enough, but maybe she's feeling a little bit exposed. So there's a little bit of shame there, maybe, or a little bit of, I'm feeling exposed, I have to just. And then she looked at me and she said, "But you support me anyway." Yeah, absolutely. That's my job. Not my job as in I have to. But if I'm going to be a partner to you, then why would you want somebody who didn't support you? It doesn't make sense to me at all. And the next one is stretched. So if I'm trying to stretch, if I offer a stretch to a client or to a partner, and they don't feel supported, then it's a bit of a violation, right? That's violence. But you can't feel supported unless you feel seen. Because otherwise, what are you supporting? So I've got these 2 children, and 2 of my children have decided to identify with the gender they weren't assigned at birth. So when I use their names rather than what they call their dead names, the names, my Janet and I gave them, when I use the names they chose for themselves, they feel seen. And when I affirm their gender in front of other people, they feel supported. But if I try and stretch them without supporting them, then that's just a violation.
Explain stretched, please, in
Um,
this context.
so, there came a time, I've got lots of examples. A silly example. Tan and I Tan had a client, and she was explaining to me, and she's saying, I don't know what to do with the group. And I said to her, "Why don't you do a constellation?" She said, "Do you want me to do what?" I said, "Do a constellation with him." She said, "I can't do that." I said, "Why not?" Am I looking at the camera here?
We can't see you.
You are, but we can't see you.
Oh, bagger. Sorry, when the lights went out, obviously the camera went off. I didn't realize that. Let me try this.
It's fine.
Well,
You might just put on your camera.
yeah. There you
You've got a
go.
very supportive voice, so
That's very kind. Let me just open this. So my webcam's gone off, so that's okay. So she didn't feel like she didn't feel like she had the permission to do that. Another silly example, right? We went to work in a corporate, and I said, "Give them cards." She said, "You want me to do what?" I said, "Let's start the session with cards." She said, "But it's a corporate. They're not going to respond to that." And so I'm supporting her, but I'm also stretching her. I'm giving her the permission to do something that she never felt that she was allowed to do. Go, Santi.
Now, maybe I can give an example of how I understand it. So if the client is safe, if people feel safe, that part we understand, then they start opening up because they want to be seen. So they start expressing themselves, and they really start talking about, I don't want to say honesty, but the truth, okay? Because then they start talking about their emotions and so. So now, as soon as we got that, now we can start showing, now we can support them, because the next step now for them is requires sometimes change, and they need to feel safe. If they feel that we are there to support them, they're not in this alone. And as soon as that environment has been created where they feel supported, so obviously it started with being safe, now they start showing their true self, they feel the support. So now you can stretch. The stretch how I see it is now we can expand and we can start challenging.
Exactly.
You know, so you can challenge, like what you did with Taryn, you challenged her to take a next step. But if those 3 steps before that, because if the client feels safe and seen but not supported, you're going to struggle with the stretch, whatever that stretch that is, to expand. You know, you're going to struggle with the challenges that you've got, because that's what we do with coaching, we challenge. But you first need to create the first 3 S's. Is that correct?
Yeah. Beautiful. Because you need to be connected with the client. And you're absolutely right, Santi, because one of the stretches is, can we challenge them to think about a new story for themselves? Can we challenge them to create a different identity from where they were? So that's a big stretch for people. And but they won't do that unless they feel supported with where they're at.
I just want to add
Mm.
the definition of being disconnected from oneself, of being burnt out, of being self-alienated, is to stagnate, is to be in a state of stagnation. So if there's no evolution, we literally die. And the thing for evolution that I'm realizing with the suite of cards is this is the evolution suite of cards. Thing that
it's the birthing of something new.
Sorry?
It's the birthing of something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the evolution, because the evolution is always going to be the next step, the new step, right?
Yeah. But I'm like, what this model is saying on the screen is that the genesis of all growth is safety. Not this idea that you have to get out of your comfort zone. That you've got to get to a comfort
zone. The genesis of all is safety. 100% correct. And this is the nurturing to the challenging. It's that integration that we use. Anastasia, you've had your hand up for a bit.
So one of the things that I find the most common when I'm working with clients, whether it's on the physio side or the coaching side or the integration of the two, is that people have got stories and beliefs around this supported. So what I find comes up quite a lot is that people may feel supported in the space, a little bit like what you were speaking about earlier, Eric, where people start becoming attached to depending or leaning on you. But that supported is much more than what you're doing for them as a coach. It's about them getting to that point where they can actually support themselves, feel supported within themselves, because a lot of the time in our lives we're having to operate our lives in a lot of unknowns around us, where there's a lot of unpredictability, where there's a lot of non-surety. So I don't know, feeling supported is like a really hard thing for people to really feel. So I mean, Taryn's really, lucky that she had this like relationship that, could give her that support. But there's a lot of people out there that don't have a relationship or a person outside of the coaching space where they're feeling supported. I don't know if it makes any sense, but anyway, that's the one stumbling block that I've experienced. Like I don't know how to open it up for the person a little bit more, that they can feel supported even though their world feels like not a nice place.
So I'm going to put it in physio terms because, I mean, physiotherapists have got a very different relationship with the word stretch than we do, right? So I...
No, but I understand what
So I
you
go
mean
to-
by, let's call me a coach. Don't call me a physio anymore.
No, well, I mean, you're a coach, but let's just talk about physio as an example.
Okay.
So when I go and see a physio, I need to feel safe because she's going to manipulate my body and I don't want her to hurt me. If I feel safe enough, then I'll allow myself to be seen. And then she might say something, how did you hurt yourself? And I might not want to tell her because maybe I picked up something and I know I should have done something different, or I didn't stretch and I injured myself through my own carelessness and now I'm feeling ashamed, right? But if I'm feeling safe enough, then I'll allow myself to be seen and say to the physio, this is what I did and this is what's happened for me. And then comes the treatment. So if I'm feeling seen, then the physio will, and I'm feeling safe, then she'll do stuff. She'll like put needles in my back, or she'll put a TENS machine on, or she'll put a heating pad on, or she'll just use her hands and knuckles and elbows and you know, try and find the source of the tension and release it. The support comes when at the end of the session, the physio says, here are some stretches for you. And most therapists will just say, okay, there's some stretches, bye. At that point, I don't feel supported. Because what am I supposed to do now? But when the therapist says to me, tell me about your day. Do these stretches, what happens when you do these stretches? Where will you find time to do the stretches? What will stop you from doing the stretches? What are you scared of? That's what support is. Because now I feel like she sees me and now she's supporting me in being able to achieve what I want, which is a body that isn't full of aches and pains. And only then will I stretch. So it's a silly example, but I'm using the word stretch there, a physical stretch and an emotional stretch. So I don't know if that little story also amplifies what Santi was saying.
So you're almost in a way, you know, the being seen and the supported is that they're so close.
Yeah. Yeah. But that support is really what will help you achieve this thing, right? What's going to stop you from doing it? So coaching is about change, and in the physio world, change is about, can you do your stretches more often? And then your body will start to change. But I'm not going to stretch until I feel supported. And that's why Anastasia, you know, Anastasia is saying, call me a coach, don't call me a physio. But that's what support looks like. And I mean, Taryn will sometimes ask that question. She'll say, what does support look like? You know, if I say to my child, you know, what are your goals at school? What will stop you from getting those goals? What can I do is there something that you need? Do you need a quiet space? Do you need a reminder? What do you need? So that's what support is. So this really is this continuum between nurture and challenge. And the other tension, you know, this book I was talking about, The Making of a Therapist, the other tension that we have in coaching is, how much do we teach and how much do we, what's the balance between the head and the heart? Because sometimes we do want to offer our clients some tools, something that they can actually do. And what's the balance between listening and like sharing or offering frames, offering new stories? If you're only safe, then you're having a nice chat and nothing is happening. And if you're only stretched, I mean, I've done this to clients, then you've got no rapport And you never see them again because they just feel, just introducing shame to the whole equation. Oh, I'm not good enough. I didn't move fast enough. I'm not. Performance coaching can be a bit like this. I'm going to hold you accountable to going to the gym 4 times this week. And then I don't feel supported. That's not a support. Then I just feel ashamed because I only went 3 times. So there needs to be a balance between, what the guy says is cognition and affect, which means a balance between some kind of intellectual or mental tool and the ability to support the person emotionally, to help them regulate their own emotions. And that's another thing about the suit of cards. One of our jobs as coaches is to help our clients deal with difficult emotions, because we're the people they come to with those difficult emotions. It's what Anastasia says, like a lot of people don't have another space outside of coaching. And that support is, I can be seen for my difficult emotion and I can be held. Your difficult emotions are welcome here. Your anger is welcome. Your shame is welcome. Bring. And only then will they accept a new story or a new frame, or even consider accepting a new story. Any ideas about this model, this 4S model? I must try and find the guy's name. Man, he irritated me. But a very cool model.
I think that the way you shared it was in the context of relationships between partners and ourselves and our clients. But I suppose in a big way, the work, particularly the work that I do, especially if it is about helping people recover from burnout, is helping them to discover ways within themselves to be safe. Ways
exactly.
to allow themselves to be seen to themselves, to not do that self-denial and that self-avoidance, and to support themselves with practices like self-compassion and self-love and self-exploration, and also to create the space for evolution.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. A new way of approaching work and what excellence means that doesn't break me. But that's a difficult thing for people to do, because the only way they can feel in control, or they can feel excellent, or they feel worthy, is when they are breaking themselves with work. And when they're broken, they don't know what to do. And so, Safia, this is what I'm saying to you. You're a safe pair of hands. And then once you're safe, you are seeing them, those clients, and you're supporting them. And then the most important thing you're saying, how do you find that internal safety? How can you see yourself without shame and without embarrassment and without judgment? And then what does support look like? What support do you need? Can you ask for support? Because the people who are burned out, the reason they're burned out is because radical self-reliance. They can't ask for support. We're the first people they've ever asked. And then, exactly as Safia says, then they can stretch, then they can evolve. There's a place then for evolution, for something new. And that's often a mental thing. That's a cognitive thing, right? That's a challenging thing. Who was saying that we're here to challenge our clients? I think it was you, Santi. Anything else on this model?
So Eric, I actually experienced that when I was at the office yesterday. Okay. So I had a session with the people team, and we've got this habit of going to the office once a month so that we actually just can connect. And then I normally buy them, something to eat, and we sit and we just connect and chat. And in this session, we actually had a few people that were sick, but they still connected through the video conferencing system, and then the rest was in the room. And yeah, I mean, it was just, I mean, with Santi, what Santi just said, it just triggered with me on that, is that, you know, we checked in with everyone, and I specifically made sure that we're not checking in on work, you know, we're checking in from a personal perspective. I'm going from the one person to the next person, and you know, the first person started to talk about financial struggles, you know, about children, about teenagers, and things like that. And it was, for me, it was actually, the connection was with the whole group. So amazing, where, you know, they would lean into the conversation and see each other, right? And they would support each other with some advice, or I can relate with that, or, you know, that must be a difficult situation. And only once we've managed to go through all of that, but it was quite an intense session, you know, it ended up at a stage where everybody was crying in the whole room. And it was just because they were sharing very intimate details of themselves as a person and not as the professional. Yeah, and I think, you know, for me, it was so amazing that they were okay to be vulnerable. And then after we did all of that, you know, we kind of said, okay, but guys, how do we then be that for the company? How do we are the people team, how do we put things in place for the company to support them? Because there's so many people like us. And that was kind of the stretch. But what was amazing for me is that they could do it with each other. And then, you know, afterwards, the messages to each other was just thank you for such an amazing space to be vulnerable like that, and to support each other. So yeah, so I think just seeing it from a group perspective for me, and seeing this was actually the process that played itself out. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. What a beautiful story. Thank you so much, Rema. So it's 8:25. I'm going to say, can we come back at 9:25? I can plug my computer in and sort out my lights, and then we'll do some fishbowl coaching for 20 minutes, and then we'll do a debrief. So say 20:35. Are we happy with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. See you in a bit.
Hola.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm doing I'm doing okay. I think the worst is behind me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going away for the weekend. I'm hoping that I can connect back to source.
Nice man.
We're going to a wedding, so it's either going to be avoidance and just, just enjoying whoever's there, and I'm avoiding what's really going down, or I'm actually going to get some time to maybe tap into my internal wisdom.
Right.
Maybe something in between.
Or something in between, maybe.
Option 3.
Option
Where's the
3.
wedding, Anastasia?
Eh,
Yes.
Where is the wedding?
In Dahlstrom.
Oh, nice.
It's
Yeah.
a good place to go connect.
Yeah. I've actually never stayed over in Dahlstrom, always only ever driven through. So, yeah, it'll be good to explore the
Very
place.
peaceful.
It's the town with the highest elevation in South Africa.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So
Is that why it's so
yeah.
cold? Because apparently it's going to be cold at
It's
night.
freezing.
It can get cold. That's why, yeah. So the trout fishing is there because the trouts like the cold water. They don't spawn in warm water at all. So it's cold water up there. Yeah. Who would like to be the client? Hello. Are you saying something, Teresa? I can't hear you.
Yes, I'll be.
Okay. All right. So Teresa wants to be the client. Fantastic. And then Anastasia, I think you went first last time.
Yeah.
So let's do it the other way
Is
around. I think
Angela
Irina, you
still
went.
there?
Angela's not here. Well, I don't know if Angela's here actually.
Angela is
Oh, there she
here.
is. Hello, Angela.
It's just I put the things off because my Wi-Fi isn't great. So but
Okay, that's fine. Now let me see if I can stop the recording. Yeah, I just want to stop the recording because I don't want to record the